Hi everyone, good evening and welcome to Health Series. Today is our session 4 and we are here with Dr. Day, who's going to be talking about food as medicine. I know many of us are interested in this topic, and Dr. Day has a lot of great ideas and suggestions for us, so we're very excited to have her here.
Thank you.
Welcome. Let me introduce Dr. Day a little bit so you know what a great speaker and treat you have here. So Dr. Day is actually a local, national, and international expert when it comes to lifestyle medicine and chronic disease management. She's been a speaker at all these different levels and highly sought out. She has her private practice in DC where she uses a combination of conventional medicine along with naturopathic therapies to support her patients and her clients. She's used many protocols, combinations of diet and lifestyle, exercise, stress management to, at the end of the day, basically help someone like you, help us to improve the conditions, the challenges we are facing. So she's multi-talented. What I love, the way I found out about Dr. Day and got excited about having her was she has a great book called Delicious Recipes for Vibrant Living and Eating More Plants. So I heard about the book. I heard about from my friends, and I also heard from people who have used this book, and some of my community, cancer community, who love her work and have seen it to be quite effective and something that they can incorporate in their day-to-day life. And these are busy people like you and me that are very much interested in clean food and using food as medicine. So I thought this is perfect. The topic today is food as medicine. So welcome, Dr. Day. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. As for our speakers, just want to remind you, so we'll be spending the next about 30 minutes or so on the session. And as you have questions, feel free to message your question to us, and we will be asking Dr. Day your live questions. So you can start to incorporate this in your life, and we can help you with whatever questions and concerns you might have. All right. So Dr. Day, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much. Do you want me to go ahead and pull up my PowerPoint?
Sure.
Okay. So we're just going to take a minute, and we're going to go to the desktop and pull up my PowerPoint presentation so we can get started. Okay. Here is our presentation for today. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much for Sangeeta for inviting me. I really appreciate the time being here, and welcome all of you to come and to learn more about how food is our medicine. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to tell you a story. This is a picture of me when I graduated from naturopathic school and I came back to DC, and I was excited to share with the world how they were going to get their food through their medicine through their food. And I started doing cooking demonstrations. And I did them for many years, and that's actually how the 2 books that you just talked about came into being. And one of the things that I did is I worked a lot with cancer patients, and I would do cooking demos very frequently, like weekly, for years. And I had a young lady, she was probably in her mid-50s, and she had a history of breast cancer, and she'd been attending my weekly sessions for a few months. And she came up to me and she said, "Dr. Day, I need to talk to you about something." And she had a worried look on her face, and I was concerned. And I said, "Of course, how can I help you?" And she said, "Well, a couple of weeks ago, I went to my doctor, and she said that I had lost about 20 pounds in whatever I was doing to keep up the good work. And I said, congratulations, that's fantastic. And she said, I haven't done anything different. I just started incorporating what you recommended for me, and I didn't even do 100% of what you said. And I'm afraid if I keep losing weight, I'm just going to whittle away into nothing. Should I be worried? And I said to her, no, absolutely not. Don't worry, relax. If you had extra weight, and she was about 30 or 40 pounds overweight when she started losing weight, so she had lost about 20 pounds, that once her body got to its normal, ideal size, she would level off and she wouldn't lose any more weight. And she said, oh, thank you so much. I was so worried. And I asked her what she did, since she said she hadn't done 100% of what I had asked her to do. And she said, well, I just started eating more fruits and vegetables and some of the recipes that you talked to me about. I haven't changed my exercise. I haven't changed anything else. And I just lost weight. And I said, that's fantastic. And I share that story with you to talk about a couple of points about food as medicine. So the first thing is that she was 30 or 40 pounds overweight. And the reason why she was overweight is because she was eating junk food, and she was eating a lot of processed food. She was eating a lot of meat, and she wasn't eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. And so here's an example of the food that she's eating, which is actually causing her to be overweight. And then she made a change by just introducing more fruits and vegetables into her diet, eating a more plant-based diet. And as a result of that, she actually lost 20 pounds without doing any other work. So here's an example of how food is actually medicine. So what we put into our bodies impacts our body's health and impacts our body's disease process. So let's just keep that in mind as we move through this presentation. So the purpose of food is fuel. Now, we use food for lots of things. We might use it for comfort. We might use it for celebrations. We might use it for religious activities that we do. But really, purpose of food is to be fuel for our bodies. And it's also to be the building blocks of our bodies. And so what we put into our body is the building block of how healthy or how ill we are as a result. And so if we're going to choose what kinds of foods we put in, we should think about doing whole foods. And we'll talk a little bit more detail about what whole foods are in just a minute. But what's important about whole foods is that they contain vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and antioxidants that protect our cells from damage. We have fiber, and they come in 3 different forms: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And we'll talk a little bit about each and why they're important in just a minute. So the good news about whole foods, especially looking at the plant-based as about 80% of what you eat every day, it's like rocket fuel for your body. So when you eat vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes, and lean meats, poultry, pork, fish, when we eat those kinds of foods, they act like rocket fuel. And as a result, we have better performance. So if we think about what that means at work, that means that when we get to work, we're able to do the job. We don't have irritability. We don't feel sluggish. We don't feel exhausted. When we eat whole foods and we think about how it impacts exercise, it allows us to have more energy to run farther, to swim farther, to be able to do more in terms of exercise, or even to exercise at all. You know, when we eat macaroni and cheese, and we eat mashed potatoes, and we eat a whole overload of unhealthy foods, what do we do after we finish eating all of that? We feel tired, we lay on the couch, we go to sleep. But when we eat whole foods, then we actually have the energy just to exercise. So just on the most basic level, we can exercise. And then if we're an athlete, it actually gives us even more than that. If we think about eating whole foods, it also helps us to lose weight, improve our overall health, and prevent diseases. So chronic diseases like heart disease or cancer or diabetes or hypertension or high cholesterol. When we eat whole foods, it lowers our risk for any of those things. So this is an example of what people call the standard American diet. That means it's a sad diet indeed. So our standard American diet doesn't have a lot of fruits and vegetables, plant-based foods, and as a result, it actually causes us to feel badly, and it increases our chronic disease. So it increases the rate of diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and cancer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as an example. I'm going to use the example of obesity. If you walk down the street and you look at someone, you can't tell if that person has high cholesterol. You can't tell if that person has diabetes. You can't tell if that person has heart disease. You can't tell if that person has hypertension. And they could have all of those things, but that's not something that we can see. So I'm going to use the example of being obese, overweight or obese, because that's something that we can see. It's a way for us to see what's going on inside their bodies, and you can see outside what's going on in their bodies. The same could be true for any of these other chronic diseases. I want to actually make the point that just because someone is overweight, it does not mean that they have other diseases. Also, what's true is just because someone is thin or skinny, that doesn't mean that they don't have diseases either. It's just we see a correlation between obesity and other diseases because it raises the risk for cancer, for diabetes, and heart disease if you have obesity as one of the problems that you're dealing with. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at slides from the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control. And so here we're going to see the obesity trends. Now, this starts in 1985. I want to bring your attention to a few things so that you can understand how these slides are giving us information about the health and the disease of the United States. So you can see in this first picture, anywhere where you see white, there wasn't data on that state to see if people were overweight or obese. Where you see the light blue, that means that 10%, less than 10% of that particular state was 30 pounds overweight, or they had a BMI of over 30. Now, anywhere you see the medium blue, then you are looking at states that have about 10 to 14% of the entire state was overweight. So this is looking at 1985. 1986, 1987, 1988, 1989, 1990, 1991, they had to introduce a new color. That color is dark blue. That dark blue shows states who their percentage of the population that is overweight is between 15 and 19%. So let's look at 1992, 1993, 1994, what you're going to notice is every state has been accounted for. There is no light blue. So everyone in the United States, in every state of the United States, people are at 10% to 14% or 14% to 19% overweight. 1995, 1996. 1997, they had to introduce another color. Now we're looking at yellow. This is people that are over 20% of that state's population is overweight or obese. 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, they have to introduce another color. So now you'll notice that the orange is for the state that has over 25% of their population is overweight. 2002, you'll also notice that now we don't have any of the light blue, nor do we have any of the medium blue, which means that the entire country, every single state, is at least 15% overweight or more. 2003, 2004, 2005, they have to introduce another color. And the reason why they have to do that is because now people in those states are over 30% of that state is overweight or obese. 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. And you'll notice that now there is no blue on that map at all. And so what is this telling us? It's telling us that what we are eating, because that's the most direct link to obesity, is causing us to be a country of overweight people. Now, what can we take from that that's good news? The good news is 70% of things like stroke, heart disease, and cancer could be avoided by changing to a healthier diet. This is according to the U.S. Surgeon General. This means that not exercise, but diet is the number one thing that could help us reduce our chronic diseases. So the foods that we put in our mouth really are medicine to help prevent us from being sick. So as you learn how to eat differently, you can learn to be a top performer in your life just by educating yourself on better nutrition. So, whole foods are the way to improve our nutrition. Whole foods are foods that are eaten in close to their natural state. One of my favorite stories to tell you is when I was in Connecticut, I lived near an apple orchard, and I could literally go and pick an apple off the tree. So you see an apple tree, you eat an apple, that's food close to its natural state. I've never seen an Oreo tree. So that's a food that cannot be a whole food because it's not in its natural state. Another way I think about whole foods is foods that are not processed or refined. So for example, brown rice actually has fiber on the outside and the starch on the inside. So that's considered a whole food. When you have white rice or rice that cooks in 5 minutes, for example, that has been refined and processed, and all of the fiber and the nutrients have been taken out. So all you're doing is getting glucose, but you're not getting any nutrients to help your body run. The third thing I think about for whole foods is that they do not contain synthetic chemicals, additives, preservatives, or artificial flavors. So when we're thinking about foods and whole foods, they come in 3 categories: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. So examples of proteins. Plant-based proteins are nuts and seeds, beans, and legumes. Other animal-based proteins are lean meat, poultry, pork, fish, dairy. These are all examples. Eggs are examples of proteins. And I'm going to actually explain to you why proteins are important in just a minute. When we're thinking about carbohydrates, we're going to be thinking about grains, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. And they're actually essential for our life functioning. Finally, the third category when we think about whole foods are fats. And we see an example of avocado. You also could have olive oil or avocado oil, or we can think about other things like some fish have good oils in them. They have essential fatty acids in them. Nuts and seeds also can have fats. So in our food, we may have a combination of proteins and carbohydrates and fats, but we want to make sure that they're all whole foods. So why are these foods important? If we want to look at proteins, for example, why we would want to eat those and make sure that those are on our plate, I'm actually going to start with number 3. They are the building blocks for our immune system. If we do not want to be sick, we have to support and we have to build our immune system. And if we are eating healthy proteins, we are doing that. Another reason why these are so important is to have for proper metabolism. So, for example, people think about metabolism as a weight loss. Like if people's metabolism are high, they'll be losing weight. And that is true. But metabolism means that the overall system is working, that our lungs are working, that our heart is pumping, that all of the things that we need to operate at the level of the cells and in our systems are working appropriately. So when we eat good proteins, we support that process. Hormones are used as there's signals that signal one part of our system to connect with another part of our system. So if we don't have the signal, then we don't know what our body is supposed to be doing. So hormones are another thing that are important, and they are created through proteins, and we'll see later they're also created through fats. Now, anyone who has had a child knows that they go through growth spurts. And so proteins are very important for those growth spurts. If you've ever hurt yourself or you've had to have a surgery and you have to repair your cells, that happens because you're eating good sources of protein. Muscle mass. People love muscle mass because if they're athletes, they want to do the best they can, and by having muscles, they're able to do that. But as we get older, muscle mass is important to help us prevent us from gaining weight, and it also helps prevent bone problems. So we have to have good muscles to help make sure that we have strong bones as we get older. When we don't have carbohydrates available, proteins are used as an energy source. So it's a secondary energy source, and it's used to help us stabilize our blood sugars. Why are carbohydrates important? Now, one thing that I want to talk about, it's one of my pet peeves. People say, oh, I'm on a no-carb diet, and that's actually not true. What they mean by that is that they are on a no sugar and a no processed food diet. They really mean that they're still eating fruits and vegetables, and they may also be eating whole grains, but not white bread or white rice. And the reason why this is important is we need energy. And in order to have energy, we have to eat carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables and whole grains. They actually help us regulate our blood sugar. They give us energy when we need it. They help us handle stress situations by releasing sugar into our blood for that purpose. They actually help us make sure that the first form of energy, carbohydrates, is being used most of the time. And carbohydrates help us with our digestive process, and they help us eliminate toxins from our body. So they're very, very important in the elimination process, as well as making sure that our nervous system is sending the appropriate signals and that our cells are receiving the appropriate signals. And they help to prevent unhealthy ketosis. And I say that because there are some diets that actually have a small amount of ketosis, which is fine, but unhealthy ketosis usually happens when someone has diabetes. How do we choose the carbohydrates that are best for us? Healthy carbohydrates are considered fruits and vegetables and whole grains. They actually take longer for our body to process, and they help us stay focused in terms of appropriate blood sugar levels, as well as giving us phytonutrients, vitamins, and minerals, which are needed for our cells to process, for our organs to operate correctly, for us to eliminate in terms of digestion, to get rid of toxins from our body. This is why we want to use healthy or complex carbohydrates. Unhealthy complex carbohydrate, simple carbohydrates, or what people talk about when they're saying, oh, I'm going on a no carb diet. I'm not going to eat white bread. I'm not going to eat sugar and candy and pasta and flours and chips. And those are the things that we want to keep to a minimum or avoid altogether. I just have to stress why fruits and vegetables are so important. They have nutrients in them that are available for our bodies to absorb. And that's what I mean by bioavailability. When we have synthetic multivitamins that we get from, cheap stores like the drug stores or the grocery stores, they usually have very, very poor quality nutrients, and we would be better off eating a better diet than taking multivitamins and thinking that those synthetic multivitamins are making us healthy. And so that's really important. And how you can get in your fruits and vegetables is think about eating variety of colors in the rainbow. The USDA recommends 7 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables every single day. So if you're not getting those in and you want to learn how to do that, you should come to my website and read some articles. You can talk about some whole food supplements that are fantastic for you. And I actually will tell you a little bit more about a course that will help you learn more about this as well. We can't forget about fats. A lot of people think if you eat fat, you're going to get fat. And that's actually not true. We need fats for our skin, for our hair, for our nails, and for our cell development. So if you have beautiful skin, then that means that you're getting in the good fats and the healthy fats. If you find yourself with your skin being dry or having acne or getting rashes and other things like that, then you probably are not incorporating the right fats into your body. For hormonal development, fats are important for our stress hormones, for our thyroid hormones, for our female hormones. So when they're not regulated appropriately, we have PMS or really bad menopausal symptoms. And I treat patients all the time to help them get their hormones back in shape. For men, erectile dysfunction can happen if you don't have appropriate fats and appropriate development. So good fats are things like avocado and olive oil. Bad fats are things like anything that's fried chicken, French fries, that kind of stuff puts bad fats into our body. And if you're not aware, our nervous system, our brain, and all of our nerves needs fat. They actually are wrapped around in fat, and our brain is mostly fatty tissue. So for mood and for memory, we need to have our healthy fats. So just keep that in mind. Now, we've talked about proteins, we've talked about carbohydrates, and we've talked about fats. What should they look like on your plate? Creating or harvesting a healthy plate means that 50% of your plate, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, should be fruits and vegetables. 25% or a quarter of your plate should be a healthy protein, like we talked about before. And 25% should be a healthy grain or a healthy starch. Healthy grains would be brown rice, or couscous or quinoa or millet. There are lots of different healthy grains that you can have that you can put on your plate. And you might decide, I don't want a grain. I'd prefer to have a sweet potato. That can fill up that space as well. So as you heard before, I actually started doing cooking demonstrations about 14 years ago. And I focused them on plant-based diets because, again, 70% of chronic diseases could be alleviated and reversed if we eat healthy foods. And so I created from the cooking demonstration my book that has over 140 recipes that actually talks about the scientific research behind why when you eat chickpeas, for example, people who eat chickpeas a couple times a week lose more weight than people that don't. If someone's a diabetic, but they like fruit if they eat blueberries, blueberries actually have chemicals that help to balance blood sugars. So these are the types of information that I put in my book along with the recipes in order to help teach people how healthy are making a difference in being healthy, increasing our disease. So finally, mention that I've just launched a 6-week online course that's everything that you need to know about what whole foods are, how, what sizes, where do you find them in the grocery store, how do you create a pantry in your own house so that cooking and eating becomes quick and easy, along with showing you how simple it is to create then that you can say, tell me some of the patients that I treat or some of the speaking engagements that I do anywhere in the country. I'm happy to answer those questions now. And finally, if you'd like to stay in contact with me, you can feel free to go to my website, and it's healthydays.com. And I have over 500 articles on different recipes and health issues that I help people with in my practice. So please feel free to go there and look at all of the free materials that you get. If you're a Facebook person, please feel free to go to facebook.com /Healthy Days and join our community and learn about different events like this event that we had with HelpSee. If you're a Twitter person, it's at Dr. Day, and Instagram is Dr. Daemon Jones. So there's lots of ways to stay connected and learn more about information that I put out on a weekly basis about how you can use food as your medicine. And there we go. We've completed that, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and take off the screen share so that we can answer questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Day. Loved your slides. This is so colorful.
Good.
It was wonderful.
Good.
And I think the initial part about, how the obesity and, the impact of food on our entire country was quite enlightening with the graphs. And you had a lot of great tips, and I know that there is a lot more that people can go to your site and learn from. And similarly, we have a lot of information on our site as well for people who are interested. And we are posting a lot of Dr. Day's articles and information, so you can come to our site to learn more. So thank you so much for that. It was very interesting.
Good.
Great. And we have some questions now coming up from our participants. So let me start to ask you those questions. I'm getting them on my messages too on the side. So one question I have that we got, is quite interesting, is about nuts.
Okay.
So the question is that this audience says, I heard on the radio program that nuts, when we powder the nuts, then it can destroy the fiber and the protein structure. So what about using powdered almonds for her child? Because otherwise her child doesn't eat almonds the way it is. So do you think there is a loss of nutrients when you powder almonds?
No, actually, I don't think that there is. So one of the things that when you use a blender and you do for anything, one of the things it does is it actually breaks open the cells of the cell wall. And it actually, for people that have digestive issues or children, for example, that it can actually help them so that you can actually get the nutrients more easily. So very often, if I am working with someone who's having digestive issues, if I'm working with children, if I'm working with elderly patients that maybe their digestive system is not as strong as it used to be, then I will recommend using smoothies or using other blender type things to actually make it easier for their digestive system to actually get to the nutrients. I think what would make more sense would be if you heat up nuts because they have oils in them. If you heat them too high, then they can become like rancid, or they could lose the good oil, and that oil could actually then become something that would cause damage to our cells. So that makes more sense to me as being a problem if you heat just
Right.
where they got that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. That's what we see is like you said. I think it's a lot about, actually it helps because when we break it open, it makes it easier to digest, and people can use it as smoothie. I think what I find is also with with the nuts is especially something like almond. You can soak it overnight.
Yes.
And that makes it easier to digest, and then you can make a paste from it, and spread it on bread, or some other way that that your child might be willing to enjoy the different nuts. So yeah, I think we have some good ideas here. And I think
if you have almonds and you decide to put them in water overnight, you can actually make your own almond milk. So some people have difficulty with dairy. And so I always recommend dairy alternatives, particularly if you want to
Dr. Day, I think your voice is breaking up. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So the network is experiencing a difficulty that is fixed.
Okay.
Make
no worries.
almond milk or
Okay, we're having a little bit of technical glitches. Dr. Day should be back soon. In the meantime, I can share with you some of my thoughts about that question and the other questions that are coming up for us. Actually, the almond milk is a really good alternative as well, because it tastes quite yummy, and you can soak the almond and make that into an almond milk. The other thing that sometimes kids enjoy is if you want to put some holiday spices in it, like you can add pumpkin spice or nutmeg or cinnamon, and that's a great way to spice up the almonds and make it into something that your child might be willing to try it out. So the goal is to make it healthy and yummy, so it's easier for them. All right, we have Dr. Days back. Let's move on to our next question. I know we have quite a few here. So there's a question about eating nuts and having a glass of milk in the morning. Is that okay?
Well, I'm
Dr.
not
Day?
really sure what the question is exactly. What I can say is that an appropriate serving size of nuts is about a fourth of a cup of nuts is an appropriate serving size. So I think it's important, and that's why I put the picture of the plate in part of my presentation, that you should have fruits and vegetables, you should have protein, and you should have grains. Meal combination of at least two of those things to eat to help you make sure that you are eating for the day. And I think that breakfast is most important because it sets the metabolism for the day. So I definitely think you need to eat enough food started, and then you need to continue to eat or to snack appropriately.
Right. Yeah, great. Yeah, so the portion control is really important, and I believe you had a picture of that in terms of what are the portion sizes. How many nuts would you suggest? Like if you were having it with your breakfast, how many nuts would be one portion size?
A
Like
quarter of
how
a
many
cup.
almonds? A quarter of a cup. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that's a good number for us to keep in mind, right?
Yes.
So the portion is really important when it comes to nuts. The other thing I find with this is also whether you can digest it, because both milk and nuts are heavy. So if your body is the kind that can digest this food and you don't feel like you have a stomach upset or gas, then that's good. If you're finding that you're having some digestive issues, then you might want to consider decreasing the amount of nuts in your diet, or the portion control in terms of the milk or nuts.
Or the dairy, because most people, 75% of the world is lactose intolerant. So dairy
Wow.
is actually not a great thing for people to eat. And a lot of the
Mhm.
nutrients that they say, for example, you get more calcium in a serving of broccoli than you do in a serving of milk. So people really push milk as this really great thing. But really the purpose of milk was supposed to be when we're babies. And if we look at mammals, there's no other mammal on the entire planet that first eats someone else's milk product, because we're eating the products of cows or sheep or goats. So that's actually in
Okay, so what Dr. Day was telling us is that milk is generally, a lot of people are lactose intolerant, and there are other ways of getting your calcium in the diet other than from just milk. Right, Dr. Day? Uh,
yes, that is what I was saying.
okay, great. And I think actually related to that, let's talk a little bit more on this topic, because I know that there is a lot of difference of opinion and confusion here. So what about, this question about reduced fat milk? So reduced fat milk is made by processing milk, where you're removing the fats and then the fat is added back. And I hear that the processing can change the nutritional value of the milk. Is it true? So should I be drinking whole milk rather than reduced fat milk? Or should I be trying something else? So this is very much along the lines of what we were just talking about.
So the main point is this: why are people drinking milk? Like, what is the purpose of you? What do you think that you're getting from it? And that there's so many other foods that you could get instead that will probably give you the same nutritional value. So the thing about milk And when you start processing it, like I said earlier in my presentation, when you process food, absolutely you take out the nutrients and you change the quality of the food. So as a result, you're not going to get the nutrients that you need or that you're looking for.
Okay, right.
Whether it's dairy, or grains, or fruit roll-ups, or whatever. We stick to whole foods. And I would really just ask, like, why are people using milk, and what they think they're getting from it, and then find another solution. Oh, excuse me.
Bless
Sorry
you.
about that.
Bless you. No worries. Right. I think that's an important thing to consider is why are you drinking milk? And that way, if you can identify, is it for calcium? Is it for protein? Then you might be able to look at alternative sources of, so you can look at various options that are available and see what works best for you, right? So I think this is an interesting topic because we have more questions related to milk, Dr. Day. So the next one is about soy milk. The soy milk, we hear that in the US it's processed and it has estrogen as a byproduct. And is that similar to tofu? And if yes, then is it a good idea to consume it, and how much?
So just to be clear, that when we talk about soy milk or almond milk or any of those types of things, that those are plant-based. They don't come from a cow, a goat, or a sheep, because sometimes people have questions about the word milk, which can be very confusing. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. The second thing is soy, the product. The soy comes in different forms. It can come as milk. You can have it as edamame. You can have it as tofu, as the question suggested. And plant-based soy is not a byproduct. It's one of the chemicals that is in the food itself. The thing about, it's called a phytoestrogen. So in soy or tofu or anything like that, you have what's considered a phytoestrogen. And the thing that's really interesting about those is they've actually been shown when they've done studies that other countries, particularly in Asia, that eat that as part of their diet, they actually have less chronic disease than people in the United States. So there is definitely a natural state, which is one of my root food, has been a little bit more processed than edamame. Choices that are soy, and I think the goal is just to make sure that you're looking for things that are not overly processed. And if you do decide to have things probably work out really well, because we be rotating our food. We shouldn't be eating the food every day all the time, because different foods have different nutrients. So when we start switching it up, it actually gives our body more nutrients, more vitamins, more minerals, and it actually creates a healthier balance for ourselves overall.
Great. Yeah, I think that was very useful. I think it's a lot about having that combination and the balance, and understanding that it is a plant-based product. So milk, when we think of milk, it doesn't mean an animal product, animal milk, but it's more about being aware and using good quality soy with as little processing as possible. Okay, very nice. I think so. A lot of more interesting questions coming up for us, Dr. Day. So let's talk a little bit about the actual cooking and suggestions for breakfast. So we have a question here about what would you suggest as a healthy breakfast?
So there are lots of different ways that you can think about breakfast. And actually, I actually have an entire segment in my course that talks about this. Some people feel like, well, if I'm going to look at that and I'm going to see a quarter of protein and a quarter of grains and a half of fruits and vegetables, I'm going to need to eat less. And you know what? That's fine. It may not be traditional breakfast foods when we think about the United States and how we eat traditional foods, but that is a perfectly acceptable way to eat a breakfast. So eating a leftovers from the night before. So that's one example. I like things that are really fast and really easy. And so people have called me the smoothie queen for years. And the reason why they do that is I really like to take smoothies and put fruits and vegetables in my smoothie, and also put some vegetarian protein powder. My favorite is Juice Plus Complete. And I mix all of that in the blender for like 2 minutes. And then I have food that I can take with me on the road, and it keeps me full for a couple hours. So I'm a big fan of doing a smoothie because it gives me fruits and vegetables, and you can get in 2 or 3 servings before you even leave the house. So I love that, as an option. Some people prefer to have some type of cereal. And examples that are very popular for people are having, oatmeal, where they put some protein in the oatmeal. They have the oatmeal, and then they have usually fruit that they put in the oatmeal as well. So again, you're looking at that plate and you're trying to make sure that you have some fruits and vegetables, you have some protein, and then you also have a grain kind of mixed in together. So that is another example that people often like to put together. So those are a couple different examples of breakfasts that might work really well.
Yeah, okay, this is great ideas, and I know there are you have more on your site, and we have some on the HelpC site too about different breakfast ideas. I love the smoothie and like having, or I should say, I love more of the quick breakfast because we are all kind of in a rush in the morning.
Yeah.
So having something that's that doesn't take too much time and is more practical and easy to adopt in our lifestyle. Always welcome those.
Yes.
That's what works for me too.
Yep.
So one question that's about smoothies, Dr. Day,
Yes.
is some people swear by smoothies, especially like the green smoothies. What do you think of those as meal option? Like actually having smoothie as a lunch or a dinner? Because on one side, we hear people who are really having a lot of smoothies and using that as a meal. But then it's not a complete meal with all the components that we just talked about, right? And secondly, there's a raw food component where can somebody really digest all this food when it's in a raw format? So what are your thoughts about smoothies?
I'll answer the second question first. So we talked about this a little bit earlier when we talked about using a blender. And so from a raw food perspective, yes, it absolutely is raw foods. But when you put it in the blender, it breaks open the cell wall. So it makes it easier for you to actually get the nutrients that you need. So just because it's raw, smoothies aren't really an issue or a problem. And in fact, I utilize them a lot with patients that have a compromised digestive system, cancer patients, elderly patients, those people that actually need a little bit more of the digestive support. And so that is part of what I work with them on. To answer the question about it doesn't have all the components of a plate, it depends on what you put in them. So, for example, the smoothies that I was talking about that I use every day, they actually do have grains in them. They have protein in them. They have fruits and vegetables in them. So when I'm making my smoothies, they absolutely are all the components of a meal. Now, I don't recommend that people eat, smoothies, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacks all the time. Like, that's too many. But I do actually use it a lot of times when I'm working with patients on a detoxification process. Sometimes I'm working with them and they need to reduce the amount of calories that they're eating and increase the amount of nutrients that they're getting. So sometimes I use that as a opportunity to teach them how to eat fruits and vegetables by having one and sometimes two smoothies a day for a small period of time when they're being supervised by me, to help them actually increase their nutrition and decrease their foods that are not so nutrient dense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Yes, I think having it as one, as a portion of your diet is okay, but I think overdoing it can be a bit of a challenge if it's on a everyday basis. But like you said, as a detox, it's really great because it helps to flush out your body and get you going for a better diet and lifestyle routine. So one question that comes up, I think both you and I work with cancer patients. So as you know, like, the digestion is compromised in some cases in our cancer community. But the other challenge also is that if they are in active treatment,
Yes.
Then their WBC count could be low, and we generally suggest that they are careful about raw food. So what do you suggest in those cases?
Well, I mean, again, I think that there's a lot of foods that people eat that are not healthy for them and are not good for their cell count. So fried chicken is going to be a lot more damaging than a raw strawberry that's washed. So I think people need to really understand that with cancer patients, we want to make sure that they have the most nutrients that they can get. One of my favorite things is to recommend things like soups and warmed foods that are not overcooked, but puree, like soups that are even pureed, things like that, have a lot of nutrients in them. They're warmed, which means, again, it makes it easier for the cells of their body to actually get the nutrients that are available to them. So I really focus on really kind of things that help support the digestive system. And if you have a low white blood cell count, you shouldn't be eating cookies or cakes or pies or, any of those kinds of things, because your immune system is already compromised, but you are eating things that will suppress it even more and even longer. So there's people, I really believe, need to come and see qualified practitioners to help them learn and understand how to eat when they are recovering from diseases like cancer and diabetes and heart disease, because there's a lot of information out there and some of it is contradictory. And so you need to understand the basis of why you're eating the things that you're eating and how it's going to support you.
Absolutely. I think you touched on so many great points, Dr. Day, that I just want to reiterate. I think, like you said, it's really important to think of the quality of the food that we are eating.
Yes.
That we are focusing on eating healthy food when we are undergoing cancer treatment and the system is compromised, because you want to try and support your system as much as possible. So very true in that area. And also, if the cell count is really low and there is a high risk with eating raw food, then just lightly saute the food, make soups. Those could be good ways of still getting healthy food in your diet, getting vegetables, fruits. Also, depending on how low it is, a lot of times, most people, if they are buying the vegetables and fruits, it's good quality, you remove the skin, you wash it well. In many cases, it's okay.
Yes.
Right. And I think it's very much like what you said, we're thinking of food as medicine. And if you think of medicine, right, like if you're having some specific health problem, we go to doctor and try and get the treatment for it. So even thinking of food as medicine, it's really helpful to reach out to a practitioner, to an expert, someone as you, who can develop this customized plan and work with the client in terms of creating this food as medicine prescription
Yes.
for them. Right. So absolutely, I 100% agree with it. And in fact, that is something we strongly strive for at HelpC, and that's why we try to help connect people with the right kind of healthcare experts so they can get this customized support.
Absolutely.
Right, great. So I think moving on, we have a few more interesting questions that I want to quickly touch on in the next minute or two.
Okay.
So one question is about best way to cook meat. And I know, like, I've heard a lot of different things from different people, so I would love to hear your thoughts on it, on what might be the best way to cook meat.
So, I have to start by saying that any type of meat should always be a condiment. It shouldn't be the main part of the meal, because research shows that 80% plant-based people live longer. So if you want to read books like The Blue Zone or Happiness or books like that, they do look at research and show that if you're eating a lot of meat, you're not going to be as healthy and you're not going to be as energetic as if you're eating 80% plant-based and then 20% not plant-based. So that's the first thing that I just want to bring up about plant-based foods and their importance. But for meat in general, if you poach food, if you poach things or put them in crock pots where you're having slow cooking at low temperatures, if you are baking them, like if you're sauteing them at a low temperature, not deep frying them, those are better options for people to start to consider. Because when you fry foods or you cook them at really high temperatures, they actually create what they call oxidants or free radicals that when we eat them, it actually damages our DNA. So we want to kind of think about that. And then grilling, if you grill something at a slow and low temperature, it would be fine. But when you get those black markings, actually have been shown to be cancer causing, or so you want to be careful of, because that actually, and if you're using charcoal, not to use lighter, and all these chemicals actually get on the food, you really want to wood chips or other things that don't have chemicals on them, and that comes as well.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. Those, some really good ideas about how you can cook your meat in a healthier option, and also consider looking at more plant-based options to add to your diet. I think we touched a little bit on oil, Dr. Day, already, but just let's talk about it a little bit more about what kind of oils are good for us. for cooking food. So we have, people talk about a lot of different things. So, some people say, yeah, we should use olive oil and canola oil. And then the other school of thought is that let's use, the more whole oils like coconut oil, sesame oil, clarified butter. What are your thoughts about oils, and what do you suggest?
So one of the things that research is starting to show is that you have the canola oils, the sunflower oils, the safflower oils. Those actually create pro-inflammatory chemicals in our body. So pro-inflammatory means that it creates more inflammation. And an example of inflammation is when you feel pain. So we don't want to put things into our body that cause more inflammation. And so that's why I don't recommend those kinds of oils. Some oils that are good to use is if you're cooking at low temperatures, you can use olive oil at low temperatures. The problem with using olive oil, if you're frying things or cooking them at high temperatures, is the oil it starts to degrade, and it actually starts to create oxidants, like I said before, which damage our cells. Coconut oil is a good option for anything that has a higher temperature because, one, coconut oil itself is actually good for the digestive tract, but two, it also has a higher cooking point to it, which means that you can cook things at higher temperatures and it's not going to degrade and cause that DNA damage that that olive oil would at a higher temperature. So there's been a lot of research behind olive oil in particular. Now, sesame oil, I don't know what the cooking point temperature is. The sesame oil that I generally use, I use it after I finished cooking, and I use it more for flavoring and just to have good oils on it. So I actually don't cook with sesame oil. And then again, clarified butter, I don't know what the cooking temperature is, but clarified butter is a much better option than regular butter, not only for cooking, but also if you want to use it for toast and other things. So as long as it's within the range of how for cooking, I would say it would be fine.
Great. Yeah. I think, so much interesting research coming out in this area, and more people are recognizing the importance of using fats and using good quality oils like clarified butter, coconut oil, sesame oil. And sesame oil also, I was just looking up, it has a high smoking point.
Okay.
About the same as coconut oil. So I think,
okay.
all those oils. Yeah, so all those oils are really good for us. Well, I know there are always more questions, but we are over our time. So I want to thank you so much, Dr. Day, for this enlightening talk and workshop on using food as medicine. We learned a lot, and it definitely picked curiosity on learning a lot more about it.
Good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you allowing me to be part of your series, and I hope to be able to continue to do more work with you in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And you can learn more about Dr. Day on our site and on Dr. Day's own website. There is a lot to go from here. I hope you take this for our viewers. Thank you so much for staying with us throughout this session. I hope you take this as a starting point, as a seed for starting to think about good nutrition and increasing that awareness in your day, in your life. And then using this as a starting point of some tips that you think about and how you plan your week, your groceries, your meals every day. And so we hope to continue to engage you more. I hope you send us questions. We want to hear more from you. Yeah, what you tried, what you liked, what was your challenge, and we are going to be here to help you all along the way. And you can reach to Dr. Day and many other experts that can help you with your specific health conditions at HelpSee. We are all here for you. And join us next month on May 5th. And then we are going to be talking about Chinese medicine. So Dr. Joseph Akwa, who is a Chinese medicine doctor and expert, especially has been focusing on integrative medicine for most of his life. He's going to be talking about using traditional Chinese medicine and Tai Chi for cancer symptom management and overall well-being. So I hope you join us again next month. And thank you so much for your time. Have a healthy and happy month, and we are here to serve you. Thank you, and have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye, good night.